Hello, everybody. This is Peter Cipcowski, and I'm pleased to introduce another segment of conversations with folks in the Roe Jan community. And today we have a special guest, Andrew Appel, who is a Hillsdale-based harpsichordist and my old friend, and also the director of the Four Nations Ensemble. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Peter.
I'm so glad you're here. It'll be so interesting to have your perspective as an artist, as a musician, and as someone who travels the world with your very impressive company of artists. So thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit about who you are, Andrew, and your background before we get into your career as a musician.
Well, let me tell you about that in terms of how it all has really taken root here in Hillsdale over the last more than a decade, and I've been living in Columbia County now for 25 years. I'm a New York musician, born in New York City, and went to the High School of Music and Art, off to college and then to Paris to live for 3 years, and came back to America because I feel so profoundly American and wanted to practice my life here rather than over in Europe, which was so attractive in many ways, and lived in New York City until about 25 years ago, where I founded my ensemble and where I had my career as a performer, both as a soloist and in chamber music, and made my life. And then friends of ours who had a small house in Gallatinville, who were doing summer theater, asked whether I would look over their house while they were away for like 2 months, and I would have access. And I was more Woody Allen-like in terms of nature, bugs and the birds didn't make up for the bugs. And what did Woody Allen say? Nature and I are two. And then I came up here for this summer and stayed in a small farmhouse, and some magic thing happened to me in that the daily occurrence of my walks through the fields in Gallatinville were so much more beautiful than anything that I remembered happening for me in New York City, that very quickly I felt that I needed to be living here more than in town. And though that came with some difficulties in terms of the professional issues, because New York is such a center of performing arts, the payoff of living here was so extraordinary for me. I found it so beautiful. Someone said to me, "Oh yes, you like it in the summertime, but wait until you've passed a winter in Columbia County." So we rented a house in Ankrum, and I remember I was sitting in the living room looking out the window in a snowstorm, and a bobcat walked right past the window, looked in at me, and then walked past. And I thought, I'm so glad I'm here for that. And it's so much more important than being in New York City for the Monet exhibit, which I could go down and see whenever I wanted. So I was sold, and I just took roots up here, and this has become my home over the last 2 decades.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And you're sitting in front of a beautiful instrument, a harpsichord. And I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your relationship and your calling to music. Can you talk about that, and also what it is about the harpsichord?
Well, and here too, I'll bring in something about my life here in Columbia County and how that significantly has changed that relationship, because New York is so brilliantly competitive, New York City, that no matter what you do, there's always a bunch of people who do it better. And because of that, you're always on edge, making yourself better. There's this kind of push to be more and more and more, and that's just great. And it really does produce some remarkable artists, scientists, whatever. But when you're in New York and you're rehearsing with your colleagues, they come and you have a rehearsal from, let's say, 11 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon. But at 2:45, they have to be down on 64th Street for a different rehearsal, and then another rehearsal. When we moved up here, I would have my entire ensemble come up, and they would either stay in the house with us or our neighbors who were great and put them up. And what we find up here is that we're focused on the work we're doing. There's not anything else going on. And when we're not working, we're cooking meals for each other. There's this sense of family in a big old farmhouse, which has made our product better and actually more wonderful. Also, I have a concert series up here, which takes place in either private homes or in barns, things like that. And it's been going on for more than 25 years now. And the people who come have been coming for 25 years. And we've developed this family of people who are happy to see each other, and in which we have these rich, beautiful events of making music, of comradeship with the audience. And something like that doesn't happen in New York City. It only happens in a place like this, where there's a sense of neighbor going on. And that's been a great boom. One of the difficult things that happened for me, especially when I moved to Hillsdale, because David and I have this house with a beautiful porch that looks out over mostly conservation land. So many birds, and it's just so beautiful. And I would sit outside and I would hear this music going on around me of the breeze and in the treetops and birds singing and whatever, all the things. And I thought, this is so much more beautiful than any music I make. That for a while I had this crisis, because I'd go into my living room, start playing the harpsichord and think, my God, this is so stiff. All I have to do is sit out on the porch and I have this symphony of sound, which is as beautiful as anything in the world. So I had to get past that. It took a while, actually. It was a real crisis.
Sounds like then being in nature, being in Hillsdale inspires your work in a deep and meaningful way.
And so do my neighbors, because I find, both David and I find that we're very, very fond of the mix of people up here, and that's enriched our lives a lot.
So tell us a little bit more about your music and your focus.
Well, I started as a soloist, where I gave harpsichord recitals, and then at some point through my harpsichord teacher, Juilliard, and I was put in contact with a violinist, a cellist, and we started making chamber music together. And as wonderful as it is to play solo pieces for people, when you're taking your own personality and your passion, mixing it with other people's equal personalities and passion, and finding consensus about a masterpiece of music, the thrill of this mixture, of this melting pot of commitment is a very special experience of working together. And we have fights, over how we want a piece to go, but ultimately we understand that we need to find ourselves in the same field, cultivating the same work, and that's it's both a combination of self-realization, but also of leaving the ego behind for this group thing that we're doing together. And I think maybe, really great sports teams must feel that too, when they're so aware of each other, and every movement that they see on the court or the field becomes part of what it is they're doing. And if everything is right, you come up with this beautiful machine. And that's what making chamber music is partially about.
And I know part of the allure of being in Hillsdale and being able to rehearse in your living room, bring your colleagues up from New York or down from Montreal or wherever they're coming from to this place, is also a setting where people like me have the privilege sometimes of sitting and listening to you rehearse. Can you describe the impact on playing on the music when there's an audience?
Oh, when there is an audience?
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about this recently, because we're in danger over the next year or so of not having our regular audience because of the threat to our health. And we can't endanger people because we want to play music for them. But
or each other.
I was for a long time an attending Quaker in New York City. There's a 15th Street Quaker Meeting House where my ensemble actually got its public first years, we gave concerts at the Meeting House, beautiful building from the 1860s. And the Quakers have something which they call a gathered meeting. And that's when, in silence, there's this impression that everyone is on this wave of a mission together, even though individually each one of us is having our own experience of our silence. There's the sense that there's some sort of coordination of intention. And it's a kind of thrilling moment when you sense the whole Meeting House of 100 and something people are on a similar path. And in a way, when you go to the ballet, or you go to the theater, or you go hear a wonderful concert, it's a gathered meeting. Because though we all have our experience and our relationship with the music or the dance that's being done, we are all on this path that's being led by great choreographer, wonderful dancers, a wonderful playwright, Bach, whatever it is. And playing for an audience when it's going well is like a gathered meeting of just profound sharing of a moment. And also the acceptance of our individuality and differences within that context. So right now, we're thinking, when are we going to have this audience again? Yeah. And it's very painful. You know, there's the pain of we're not making any money. All our contracts are canceled. Tanglewood, you know, we look at all the festivals that are around Hillsdale, they're all canceled, which is catastrophic economically, but it's personally catastrophic because we were never doing what we did to become wealthy. We were doing what we did because we wanted those gathered meetings. That's the impetus for being in the arts. And we're threatened with, you know, this new world of doing everything on the internet, but that is not a sense of being physically together and really enjoying, really entering in this world of an artwork that we're experiencing. So that's quite sad and worrisome for all of us.
Yeah. I do want to talk to you more about that and the impact on your ensemble, but let's get there in a second. If you could talk a little bit more about your motivation to get behind Four Nations, because we will get through this, and you will be performing live again. So tell us more about Four Nations and how the ensemble works and your motivation for forming it.
Well, it has its professional aspect, which is we have a job to do. We have these pieces of music that we have to learn, and we have to be good enough for them. And good enough is both good enough technically. We have to be able to play those notes, play them in tune, play them together. And then we have to be good enough philosophically and emotionally, is that we have to make it mean something. That, you know, just because something is pretty, it doesn't mean that you've taken it to the level where it becomes a kind of statement, a confession of feeling, or a statement of values. And all the pieces we play are good enough to be works that want to speak to an audience about whatever, but we have to make them alive. So doing that's the impetus to work with the ensemble. Now, there's also the family aspect of the ensemble. The cellist in my ensemble, Loretta O'Sullivan, and I have been working together since 1984. And that, you know, that's a long time. We've known each other from our 30s to, well, I'll be 69 in a couple of weeks. We've known each other all this time. And we just love each other, like family. And again, family involves frictions and difficulties and working through issues, but it's also a profound relationship with someone on a professional and personal level. And with all the members of the ensemble now, we've been working together long enough that we are very meaningful creatures in each other's lives. That's a really wonderful way to live out a professional life.
Andy, where does Four Nations come from? Can you talk?
Oh,
why Four Nations?
the title itself. Well, one of my favorite composers is Couperin, and he wrote 4 sonatas for 2 violins, cello, and harpsichord, and they're called The Nations, and there are 4 of them. So we thought, oh, that's a nice. In the 1980s, when we were formed, Four Nations was a nice title. It wasn't pretentiously French. It was easily understandable and memorable. The historic roots of Four Nations are that they were the 4 Catholic monarchies in Europe. And so it was Spain, Austria, Piemonte, Savoy, and France. And Poland wasn't part of that because it was an elected monarch, and there was something kind of subversive about that. So that's where we got our name. But as a fundraiser, if someone says, what are the Four Nations? I ask, where are they from originally? And they might say they're from Upper Volta. And so I'll always include Upper Volta as one of those 4 nations. Works very well.
And the musical focus, obviously the harpsichord behind you, and Loretta, her instrument is the cello, correct?
Yeah. And we have, right now in the ensemble, we have a wonderful singer, Pascal Boudin, and we have a violin, a flute, a viola, cello, and harpsichord.
And you have a particular devotion to a period of time, do you not?
Yes, it's Baroque music, so we are the central repertory comes from anywhere between, like, what we play is anywhere between 1650 and 1780. Mm-hmm. So it's like 130 years of music, but they're pretty good years.
So you have they're magnificent years, and I learned a lot of that from you and listening to your ensemble. Tell me, you have a series of you travel all around the world, and of course you have a series of concerts in the fall, typically right here in Columbia County. Tell us about those various tours. You have a season in New York. You mean
the ones that take me away from home?
Yeah, tell us about the series.
Well, the world. You know, just in December, I was personally in Italy, playing in the Dolomites, in a town in the middle of the forests where people like Stradivarius and Guarneri got the wood to build their violins. And it's historically very interesting. It's on the border of Slovenia, Austria, and Italy. And it's kind of a mixture of cultures, but the forests are very beautiful and the mountains are gorgeous. And I played a recital there. The best thing about all of that is to come with your art to a place, another place which is so rich in art that there's this kind of cultural exchange going on all the time. We play for them, and then we walk around and see whatever it is there, whether it's, of course, Paris or Vienna or whatever. Whatever it is they have to offer is so much more than we have to offer. Mm-hmm. But we feel there is a kind of exchange going on, and it's wonderful to do that. But I have to say that my favorite concerts are the concerts here in Columbia County. We're going to Detroit if concerts are not canceled, to do the Four Seasons on a series there. We've just gotten the contract to do Henry Purcell's wonderful genius opera Dido and Aeneas, which actually we're going to do in Hunter, New York. So, and that will be in about 1.5 years, and we certainly hope by then there's not going to be a problem with people coming together and listening to music. But the concerts here with this audience that I have up here are, without question, my favorite events now.
And what is that? What is it because they have a relationship with you, their family, they've been listening to you for a long time? Or is it the presence of a barn? What is the combination of elements that makes it so comfortable for you as a musician?
Well, there is, since the music we play is kind of intimate. You know, chamber music is a very personal, intimate experience. I know it has very often the reputation of being overly esoteric and sophisticated, but it really isn't. What it is it's extremely personal. That when you hear 4 people playing as opposed to 45. And you're playing in a room that seats 70 rather than 750. You have the opportunity to really, well, you know, it's similar to a really great cabaret singer, a real, you know, Edith Piaf or Judy Garland or so on, where you feel that you're being taken into a part of their heart, which is so personal and so intimate and so vulnerable. And that's what our music is. So when you're with the same group of people who come year after year, it gives you permission to go out on emotional limbs. Because, you know, these people, they want you to be your best. Mm-hmm. And they want to hear who you are at any moment. So there's a lot of license, there's a lot of freedom that comes in playing for this audience that seems to insist to want to come back over and over again.
So does that cancel out, does that intimacy, does that joy of being in a barn with people you know cancel out the acoustic advantage of a concert hall where you may play abroad or in New York?
Well, I have to say that our barns sound pretty good. So I've never felt that as much. But what it does, if I'm playing, if we're playing in, you know, Detroit or Washington, D.C. with a lot of people who don't know us, then it's like a first date. Mm. There's excitement in a first date. They don't know who we are. We don't know who they are. And we're sort of feeling the whole thing out. But when we play for our audience up here, it's like marriage. We know each other really well. And I think that's a good metaphor for the difference between being on tour and being at home base.
Yeah. So take a minute now, Andy, to talk a little bit about the impact of this horrible pandemic. I know it's devastating, and I know you have a lot of personal friends as artists, as musicians. There's a spectrum of fear and impact. But how have you, as the director of this ensemble, managed the process? What has it been like in dealing with this process?
Well, let alone my fears of what the future might bring for us if we don't find a way to be safe. And I know everyone wants to be safe. We're all saying, oh, we're going back bit by bit to work, as if there's been any game-changing progress. There hasn't. And we don't know. And living in darkness like this, it makes it very hard to get overly sanguine about the fact that I'm going to be able to take Cooper, my dog, to have his hair cut and his nails cut again soon because the state is opening up a little bit. But this could be a major game changer in terms of the way we communicate with each other. Mm. And if it is, I don't know whether I'm going to be good at it. Mm. And I know I'm good at what I've been doing for the last 50 years. But, you know, particularly at my age, I wonder how flexible, imaginative. I know I can be industrious and I know I can work hard, but my imagination might not be young enough to recompose how we do this. So that's a little scary. When this first happened, we had just begun our New York series of concerts. We have 3 concerts in New York City every year and 3 concerts up here. Those are self-presented things. And just as we were about to go and play our second in the New York series in New York, we had to cancel. But everything was set up, the program was learned. So what we did is we went to the Masonic Hall in Hillsdale and we recorded an hour-long concert of the music we were going to play with a videographer and a good recording engineer, and the acoustics in this room are very nice in the Masonic temple. And we put that out. And so fortunately, our audience in New York were completely generous about the fact that we were going to have to cancel 2 concerts in the series. Not only did people not ask for their money back, but they sent in additional donations to help get us through because we lost a significant amount of money. We have our concert series in the fall set up, but we don't, and I've sent out notes saying we don't know whether this is going to be possible. And we might have to come up with something imaginative so that we can still be making music for everybody, but it might not be what it's been in the past. So it's actually quite scary. Financially, it's devastating. And colleagues who rely on being freelance musicians, all their work has been canceled through September. And there's nothing much to take its place in terms of their ability to make money. So there's a real crisis there. It's no worse than the crisis that everyone is feeling. So we can't really bang our chests and feel uniquely put upon, because we're not. But what might be the case is if large audiences are not a possibility anymore, other people will be going back to work before we will. And I don't know what to do for my colleagues about this. And ultimately I won't know what to do for myself. I mean, I could be retired, and there's Social Security and there's savings and things like that. But I don't want to be forced into retirement because of a virus.
Right, that's right.
So there's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of emptiness because we haven't made, the ensemble hasn't made music together because we're all in our homes. We're all, I think, practicing and doing solo repertory, which is beautiful. But a very important part of who we are as artists has been just put into suspended animation.
It will be deeply satisfying when we can hear you all together again, I'm sure. Is there any music that you're listening to that's comforting, or music that you're playing? Perhaps you could play that is comforting?
Well, I've never given up being a solo harpsichordist, and I love the repertory for the harpsichord alone. And I've been working, it's a lot of time for me to learn new music. And there are large collections of pieces that I've always thought, oh, if I only had time, I could be working on those. And so in fact I am. And I'm working to learn all the harpsichord music of Francois Couperin, who's, as I told you, one of my favorite composers. There are 4 very beautiful books of harpsichord pieces, and I've done much of them, but I haven't done it all. So I am doing it all. And then Bach wrote a series of suites, English, French suites, and then the partitas. And I'm going through all the French suites now and learning all of them finally. I've learned 2 of them in the past, but they're 6. So I've learned the first and the second one, and so I'll do all of those. So it's giving me time to do that, and that's very rewarding. But as positive as I can be, as beautiful as the spring is becoming right now, I spend half my day feeling comforted and enthusiastic about my work, and then half of the day fighting off the sense of both futility and fear of what the future is going to be. And it's trying to keep my emotional head above water so that I don't fall too deeply into a sense of a bleak future. But the music, anything. I mean, I'm so lucky to be moved by this extraordinarily beautiful treasury of music that we have. And not only music I play, but the music I listen to. Listening to Sarah Vaughan sing George Gershwin is every bit as thrilling, or Billie Holiday, or whoever. And for all of us who have it, YouTube is amazing. Any genius performer you want to hear, you just type it in, and there's some. You can even see Sarah Bernhardt doing a silent film. So there's a lot of wonderful stuff out there to help us through.
Again, is there anything else that you'd like to share to your friends and neighbors here? And Andrew, as you know, this is part of a series of conversations with folks in our community in this very unique period of time. And
Yeah.
these histories will be out there for 100 years and beyond. One day people will be looking back at this moment in time.
Well, you know, I think one of the things that I hope we're all aware of, whether we're people like me who came up here 25 years ago and were first strangers up here and now have decided that really this is home for us, or people who have lived up here for 150 years in their families, is that when I think about what's going on now, which is catastrophic, we're living in a catastrophe. And it's happened before in history, but the fact that we're surrounded by such, you know, such beauty in the landscape. We have these wonderful farms all around us that produce delicious, delicious food. So most of us are not suffering the way, let's say, my friends who are stuck in New York City are, where it's, you know, going to the supermarket is pretty awful. Where we have a sense here of, we don't crowd each other out, but we are neighbors, and aware of each other in a way where we're responsible to some extent for each other. I think that in very unfortunate times, we're very lucky to live in Columbia County. And I hope that people are getting the strength from the beauty of our society here, and also the beauty of the landscape, which is all over the place. You know, driving into Hillsdale from Prairieville, just how wonderful it is to look around and see the season coming into fruition. We're fortunate people in unfortunate times.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for chatting with me today. And we're lucky that an artist of your caliber is living with us, and I'm so glad that our countryside inspires you. And thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your story.